Go.
Hi, my name's Laura Goodman, and I'm with Oklahoma State University. I'm the Range Extension Specialist, and today we're having a field day here at the Range Research Station near Stillwater. We wanted to go ahead and share what we're working on with the Prairie Project. The Prairie Project is a USDA-funded grant where we're looking at patchburn grazing and multi-species grazing to increase productivity and drought resilience in our rangeland pastures. One of the things that we've found with this research is that with multi-species grazing, we can increase the total number of animals that we're taking off of that land without any detriment to the ecosystem that we're supporting in these pastures. Another thing that we found is that with patchburn grazing, where we burn just a portion of the pasture but allow animals access to the whole pasture, that we can increase the use by wildlife of these different areas while also increasing productivity from livestock. And so we can get really awesome weight gains on the cattle that are in that pasture. We're trying to see if we can also do that with goats, and so far it looks really promising that the goats are also doing really well with patchburn grazing. And part of the reason that that is working so well is that we're burning every 6 months. And so cattle and goats have access to recently burned, really high quality forage for a majority of the year. Some other things that we're working on here is just looking at how these systems are controlling woody plants. Across Oklahoma, Texas, many of our Great Plains states, we're having a lot of issues with especially eastern red cedar, but lots of other woody plants encroaching into these prairie systems. And goats and fire are a way that you can control those, but they're really economical. So you're not spending a lot of money on mechanical control or herbicide. In the case of goats, we're actually making a little bit of money off of these. So it's working really great. We're excited about it. Really happy to have the Southern Plains Climate Hub as a sponsor for today's field day and helping us put this on. Really appreciate that collaboration.
Could you talk a little bit about the drought resiliency that you've seen from some of these, the patch burning and the inclusion of multi-species grazing on some of these pastures? How has that affected in dry conditions like we're seeing right now? What have you seen in the past with that?
Yeah. So with patchburn grazing, because animals are concentrating their use on a recently burned patch, we end up accumulating a lot more forage in those areas that haven't been burned recently. And so we can actually stockpile forage in those other areas. And so that provides us with multiple years of stockpiled forage for if we do end up going into a drought. And so what we've found, and actually there's been research in Kansas and Oklahoma and even North Dakota that has found that you have a less of an impact from drought when you're doing this patchburn grazing type of management versus if you're just burning the entire pasture or not using any fire across your pasture at all. With the goats can help us. We're increasing total productivity, but at the same of animals coming off of these pastures, but at the same time, we're suppressing the woody plants that are often competing with these grasses. And so instead of being, we can end up in a really long drought if we allow these trees to take over our pastures that were, historically grasslands. And it impacts the water availability to many of our important forage species. And so with the goats, we can help to suppress those to a greater deal, encourage as much of that grass and broadleaf plant growth that's important for our livestock, as well as many of our wildlife species that depend on it.
Well, that would also have a positive impact on reducing potential fuel loads for wildfires as well, wouldn't it? Both the grazing of the woody species and the patch burning as well. There's multiple benefits that come off of those practices, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. So especially with a volatile fuel like eastern red cedar, if we can control eastern red cedar before we're into a wildlife situation, we have a much better chance of being able to control that fire. They have oils in them that make them what we call a volatile fuel. They burn very hot and very intense, and their embers fly a long ways, and so they can spread fire very quickly on those windy, low humidity days. And in addition, with the patchburn grazing, when we have fire and then animals are grazing on that recently burned area, we suppress fuel for a longer period of time when we combine those together versus just burning or just grazing alone.
Thank you very much.